Hey everybody, welcome to BODS Mayhem Hour. I'm your host, John the Bod, aka the Bod Father. And as always, I bring you guys awesome interviews. Today it is an honor and privilege to have legendary guitarist, Mr. Lou DiBello on the show. He has his fourth solo release called Heatwave that's out right now. And you guys want to check this out. Phenomenal guitar player. And also, too, I want to throw this in here. He performed a national anthem before the University of Illinois men's basketball game this past Sunday, November 19th at State Farm Center, Champaign, Illinois. So, Lou, how's it going?
Real good, man. Thanks for having me on, John. I appreciate it.
Not a problem. Glad to have you on here. Let's jump right into this. What's impressed you or excited you the most about making the album Heatwave? What's caught your eye about, if anything, man?
Definitely the response was and you know continues to be really good and I mean I guess better than I expected, or I didn't necessarily know what to expect, but yeah, people have really been really positive about it in all kinds of ways, and so I couldn't really be happier about that. Once the recording process was done, and I had spent a lot of time getting everything together, either my playing and writing, or getting the tracks together with the other players, and so I was I thought it sounded real good. I was very pleased with it, but yeah, it's just continued to kind of grow here a little bit, and having the opportunity to get out and have some different folks, hear it and really sort of go, kind of go for it is great. So yeah, that's the way I've seen it so far.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong on this. You produced this cell, plus CJ Socia and plus John Rupp produced this. Is that correct?
Those guys produced the sessions. CJ did the sessions for Mike LaPond for the three songs that Mike played bass on, and John Rupp engineered and produced the tracks for Ross's guitar solo, and then I recorded all my guitars and then the bass on the other 5 songs, as well as the drums with my buddy Bobby Wiles that played drums. I recorded all that at my place here in Illinois. And then the vocals were recorded in Germany by Karsten. Then the actual final remix and mastering was done at another studio in Germany by Rolf Monks. And that was really sort of the icing on the cake. He really gave it a nice polished, sort of real legit kind of sound. So yeah, it all came together real nice.
Any songs, Lou, off this album that stand out more to you than any on as of right now? I know these are like your favorite kids, but can you pick any at all, maybe?
Well, certainly Blood on the Cross is a real favorite. Having Ross play on there with me, Ross the Boss, of course. And also that's one of the tunes that LaPond plays bass on. And, that was a song that I had sort of kicking around in my head as I was putting it together, before the actual recording started, when it was finished, and I heard the final master and everything. I mean, it was just a really great representation of how I had been hearing it in my head originally. There's a lot of different tempos and feels. I mean, it's all sort of a hard rock, heavy metal vibe, of course, but some of the instrumental tunes have a little bit of a different feel. But yeah, Blood on the Cross is certainly one of the high points, but I think it's pretty strong across the board, and that's kind of the response I've gotten from a lot of people. And initially, when we were putting it together, I didn't know if maybe I should have another song or two on there, and we thought it might maybe be a little bit short or whatever, but I'd rather have it be short and concise and have a nice flow than maybe have there be a couple of songs that, people might pass over or whatever. So
now, you worked with many great musicians on this album. You worked with vocalist Karsten Lizard Schultz, and plus you had guest appearances by bassists, like you said, Mike LaPond. He was with Symphony X and Ross the Boss. Plus you had legendary guitarist Ross the Boss Friedman on this. How is working with those guys on this album? And did you work with them before on your previous albums as well?
No. All the previous releases that I did were, all just local musicians here, different guys mostly that I played with one way or the other. Yeah, actually getting hooked up with Ross was, I suppose you could say a bit of a coup in a way, but kind of came out of the blue. There's a lady that works with him, Lori Hunt, who had seen a video of me on Facebook, and I was Facebook friends with Ross, but we never, I never asked him about, playing or anything like that, and
Right.
It was just sort of a kind of a general Facebook friendship or whatever. But we had kind of developed a little bit of a friendly rapport or whatever, and so Lori saw this video and didn't really know that I was a little bit of an unknown commodity, and she starts asking me questions about, do I have an agent and what am I doing and all this. So one thing led to another, and she was encouraging me to, maybe talk to Ross and have him listen to some of my stuff and maybe get some advice or something. And, I didn't necessarily know what I might get out of it, but I figured having the opportunity to, talk with somebody of that level of experience in the industry and, guitar playing in general and everything, I'm not a kid, and I've certainly done, a lot in my region or whatever, but, there's a lot somebody like me can learn from a guy like that, so I was kind of all ears, and we had some nice, once we got, she put us in touch by phone, and, we had some nice discussions and whatnot, and, one thing led to another, and after a point, I asked him about, maybe playing on a tune with me, and so that's how all that came about. And then Lori also put me in touch with Mike LaPond as well. And, of course, goes without saying that those guys are total pros and everything. So the recording process and working stuff out, really, it just was virtually about as seamless as you could imagine. There's the potential, for all kinds of hang-ups in that process, one way or the other, and it really just went as smoothly as could be, and the vocals came together just as easily, and, I've done a lot of other recording projects and writing, so most of it was familiar territory. Working with those guys and working in a little bit of a remote setting was different in a way, but yeah, it came together really, really well, and I was real fortunate to sort of have such a great kind of crew that I was working with all the way around. So
Yeah, and it doesn't matter how old you are. You're always learning. And for those folks who say, well, I don't need to learn, I don't need to do this, then you have sadly came to the end, my friend.
Yeah, you're missing the boat at that point.
Yeah. Look at Zach Wild. He's always doing stuff. And don't knock yourself, Lou. You're a phenomenal guitar player, man. I like your style. I like it.
I appreciate it. I'm getting, I get a better, maybe perspective a little bit as time goes on. And realistically for myself, I teach guitar and I play a lot of, especially at this point, a lot of primarily cover gigs too. But I play all the time and, I work on things, and I can tell, that my playing gets better, even, from month to month, something gets better, but yeah, I appreciate it. And it's nice to, get some good, good quality recording. The other stuff that I've done was certainly decent, but in all areas, including, the final sort of sound of the final CD product and everything. Mm-hmm. This is certainly a notch or two above anything I've done to this point on all counts. So yeah, it's great. It's very sort of rewarding, and I feel very fortunate that that it's gone as well as it has.
Speaking of that, how much growth musically have you seen yourself go through from these previous albums to this release, or has it just been more of a personal growth, or both?
Well, for sure both. And my like I think most players, one way or the other, my sort of fundamental skills and my sort of general playing technique and everything, after 20 years, it's a lot better, I mean, no matter how good it was, then.
Right.
And I mean, I really think that's true of some of the best guitar players today, and Ross would certainly be in that category. And, personally, I think if you look at Yngwie Malmsteen today and you really look at the way he plays and his technique and his touch, I mean, he's way better than he used to be. People might think that he's, a little, kind of redundant or over the top. But man, I mean, it's just sick how good he is. And bands like the Scorpions and Angus Young on their last tour. I mean, those guys that have been playing a long time. I mean, man, they're freaking killer. It's crazy how good guitar players are after they play for 40 years or whatever,
Sure.
And so compared to what I did like on my first release, Pile Up, which was like 1994, 95, something like that, 94, I think. Kind of my basic playing is certainly much more polished and everything. Really, a lot of the riffs and things that I was doing back then, I happened to listen to a couple cuts off it not that long ago. I can see that, that it's not bad or whatever, but also to my ear, I mean, I can hear how much more polished and developed I play now, so I certainly prefer, what I'm able to do at this stage.
Oh, yeah, sure. I can imagine you going back and listening to something that was recorded 10 years ago and going, oh, did I really do that? Oh, geez.
Right.
Oh, stop it. Turn it off. That's not me. That's not me.
Yeah. Yeah, so, and then, and sometimes there's stuff that's not too bad, but, certainly on the whole, it's like, it's a lot better now.
Yeah, that was Bobby. That wasn't me.
Yeah.
Do you do anything differently during the writing recording process to help you keep your mind open and fresh to new guitar riffs or anything like that? Do you do anything different to help you?
Well, especially with this album, which this is the first, this is my fourth solo release, but of my solo releases, this is the first one to have any vocal tunes on it. And, I've done some different demos over the years of one sort or another where there were vocals, and I've, recorded tunes, in more of a band format with vocals. So it's not that I've never done vocal tunes, of course, but especially writing the tunes for this album and how I tend to write vocal tunes in general. If I have a hook, typically the title of the song, like Blood on the Cross or Let Me Hear You Scream, usually when I'm, whatever it is that might inspire me to have that idea for that particular hook, usually when I hear that, I kind of hear it as it is in the song. And so I kind of end up hearing that, and then that's what would inspire me to write the rest of the song at that point, whatever it would be. Mm-hmm. But usually once I have that hook and I kind of hear it, maybe I might sit down with the guitar or whatever and just kind of, sort of figure out, maybe kind of what I'm hearing in my head, what the chord or the key is or whatever. But then usually when it's at that point, then usually writing the rest of the tune is not overly difficult. I have a real good understanding of songwriting structure, and whether it's from teaching guitar or, playing so many cover songs over the years, which literally I've played, thousands of songs over the years. When I start writing a tune, I don't have any trouble kind of figuring out, okay, whether it's a verse and a chorus, and then if you're going to have a bridge or, well, it's not always the same, of course, but to me, kind of the structural aspects of putting something together tend to come together pretty naturally once I have, sort of the main inspiration or whatever. With instrumental stuff, it's a little different because maybe I might kind of come up with a rhythm figure or a little bit more of a chord structure or something, and then work to create an instrumental piece around that. So in a way, that's almost for instrumental stuff, that's almost the reverse, because I usually end up coming up with the main melody second, where the guitar would play a melody that, takes the place of what a vocal might do. But whereas with a vocal tune, I usually end up kind of writing the vocal melody first. So go figure.
What do you hope your fans take away from the new album once they start to listen to it, or just your music in general when they pop it in to listen to it?
Well, whoever it is, and whether it's somebody that knows me or knows about me and, gets a CD and then they want to listen to it, or whether it's somebody that hears it, by chance for the first time or whatever, or maybe sees me playing live, for the first time or something like that. Basically, whoever the best guitar player in the world is, it's hard to say. It's not me, it's not, whoever, it's hard to say whoever the best in the world is. But, in a way, my goal whenever I play and whatever people get out of my music is, I'd like for them to think it's one of the best things they've ever heard.
Sure. Well, yeah.
That's my hope. I don't know if it always is, but that's the idea.
Sure. And you never know, man. I mean, a young kid seeing you playing up on stage, or an older person. I mean, shoot, dude, you don't know what a spark you could light in them and say, hey, I want to go play guitar. I want to get this guy to teach me how to play guitar, or just even learn to play guitar, period.
Yep.
I mean, that's something beautiful to see.
I appreciate that. And that's, especially with teaching guitar, I just have the opportunity to work, with so many different people and whether it's something that people get out of, listening to, my stuff or seeing me play or coming for lessons. I just, I want it to be legit. I have a pretty good old school kind of background and if you look at, the guys like, Roy Clark or, Chet Atkins or guys like that, those are real guitar players, somebody like an Yngwie Malmsteen or an Uli Roth or guys like that really play, at a phenomenal level. And of course, a Steve Vai or a Joe Satriani. And, those guys' styles aren't necessarily my real big thing, but, of course they're great players, a Jeff Beck, guys like that.
Yeah.
That's where my head's at. I don't know if my playing always, is going to come off in that way, but, that's where I'd like it to go,
Folks, right there shows you the mutual respect of a rock metal guitarist that pays respects to one of the country great guitarists, Roy Clark. I mean,
Roy Clark's the best, man. Roy Clark's the original American badass.
Him and Buck Owens, man, so.
Yep.
What can fans expect at a show from you when they come to see you live, man?
I try and, make it exciting. I think the way a lot of my music sounds as far as the original stuff, it has the potential to, have that effect. And if I'm playing lead guitar in an improv situation, maybe cover tunes, but maybe kind of an improv situation, again, I like to make it memorable for people, so I definitely, I try and go the extra mile and play something real good,
Sure. Well, sure. Now, we're living in the digital era of recording albums and plus social media, Lou. Do you like this era that we're in right now to get music out quicker, and especially, for artists like you, do you think helps you guys more, or no?
There's sort of two sides to that answer, and certainly in a way, it does help somebody like me. Potentially, more people are able to, get a hold of the music more easily, more quickly. At the same time, you don't really have the old school record label artist development thing. Now an artist has to pretty much develop themselves, and maybe they end up selling a lot of CDs without even getting a record deal,
Right.
and oftentimes getting a record deal anymore doesn't really hardly get you anything that you couldn't necessarily do on your own. I mean, even a lot of more established acts are sometimes releasing, the CD themselves, So the climate is different. It seems like there's so much more of everything, which doesn't necessarily mean that the quality is any better. There's so many more bands and there's so many more guitar players, so maybe you can't really have a record label develop, there'd have to be too many record labels for everybody to be on, so it's just kind of a different scene. And the downside, I think, of, the current state is, you have the opportunity to get stuff out there, but I think it's just as easily to get lost in the shuffle,
Sure, because there's a lot of stuff out there, like you said.
Because the shuffle's way bigger than it used to be,
Sure.
So, it's like, you can get out there, but then there's so much more out there at the same time, in a way. And I talk about this sometimes with students or whatever about listening to new music, when I was a kid and, you turn on, WLS radio or something and you'd hear, Stairway to Heaven and American Band and, then you'd hear like Rufus with Shaka Khan and the Ohio Players all within, 20 minutes. And radio at that time, if you listen to the radio, you heard a bunch of different music all the time,
Yeah.
Now radio stations are so pigeonholed, it's not really, the sort of the same deal. And you can get anything on YouTube or online or Spotify or whatever, but it's almost like, especially for maybe a kid that might want to check out some new music, it's almost like there's too much. How do you,
That's true.
I mean, I remember going to, record stores, and actually that's how I bought the first Manowar album. I remember, distinctly being at a record store and just kind of looking at some, new albums and, stuff. This looks kind of cool. I'll check it out, Mm-hmm. And, potentially you can, scroll through YouTube or something, or, search a general term, but it's just it's a different, it's a different vibe, for sure.
Yeah, and I do this every day, and I see a lot of stuff that comes in every day. And I hate when people say, well, you have to weed and pick through everything. Well, if you're here to support bands, you're going to play just one track off of anything that they send you to help them. And I like it. But like you said, there is a lot of stuff that you have to go through. There is.
Right.
Support-wise, is there a country or a region that stands out more or surprises you that you actually get support from that area?
Well, really, the CD just came out at the end of July, and so we're just starting to get a little bit more exposure. I have gotten, some real nice reviews, and sold some CDs, overseas and UK and several other countries, looking to hopefully get out and do some live playing as far as, some of the stuff from the CD goes. With Karsten, of course, being in Germany, I'm not going to be working with him over here in the near term. That's not out of the question. Maybe if we get things a little bit more kind of established. But so I'm working with trying to get a singer going over here. I've got a couple guys that we're just about ready to kind of get a couple formal auditions going, and hoping to be ready to do some regional dates around here for starters, maybe shortly after the first of the year. So it'll be sort of interesting to kind of get out and see how it's sort of received live, and maybe getting in front of some acts where we would open up and potentially nobody there would, have a clue as to what they were going to hear from the opening act. But if you're in front of a artist that's got a crowd that's prone to like this music, I think it'll go over pretty well, So we'll see how that comes together. But that's kind of in the early stages. So yeah, that's kind of the next logical step at this point. Whether it was, getting guys like Ross and Mike and Karsten involved in the first place, or kind of taking this particular kind of PR path that we're doing right now, and then, really getting such a good response, from one stage to the next. I wouldn't have necessarily predicted the way things have gone, but it's all kind of sort of logically going, one foot after the other. So that's kind of the next step here, is to just get the live situation a little bit more together. And, my plan is to do another CD, hopefully by the end of 2018, be ready to release it by the end of 2018. I've got a fair amount of material that's, in the formative stages to get that together. So that won't be overly difficult, but in the meantime, hoping to get the live situation off the ground here, in the near term. So that's kind of the plan.
What made you want to become a musician? What was that spark for you that said, yeah, that's what I want to do right there?
Well, my parents were somewhat musical, especially my dad played a little bit of piano and played clarinet in high school, and my mom sang pretty well, and my uncle on my mom's side, even when I was a little kid and to this day as well, he's a great jazz guitar player. So I was exposed to a whole lot of music real early on, and I actually have pretty clear memory of when I would have been about 4 years old listening to Frank Zappa and the Mothers of Invention, So as a little kid, I would kind of goof off, and I always sort of kind of pretended to, be in a band or whatever. And I played piano and saxophone when I was a little bit younger, but I didn't actually start playing guitar really until I was about 15. And for sure, a big part of that was seeing a Jimi Hendrix documentary film that has a lot of live footage in it. And, I was a little bit familiar with Jimi Hendrix at that time, but had, of course, he was dead by the time I was, grade school or whatever. And so, I never would have seen him. It's kind of funny. I remember being about 6 or 7 years old and looking at some Jimi Hendrix albums and knowing that he was dead. And I just kind of remembered that, I thought he seemed real cool, and I was kind of sad even then, that I would never see him play. It's kind of a weird thing to remember as like a 6 or 7 year old kid, Yeah. But then when I was about 14 or 15, I saw the documentary and was kind of in the earliest stage of thinking about playing guitar. And I never really got into Kiss, but, I had started to get into like Led Zeppelin and, Rainbow and stuff like that, so yeah, that was kind of really the big, whether you call it a spark or whatever, was the sort of seeing Jimi Hendrix play and getting a better understanding of how the guitar can be such a dynamic instrument in that way that it can cause a lot of different emotions or, responses from both the listener and the player, so.
Now, you mentioned that you teach classes for guitar. Let's talk about that a little bit. Do you do it online with your students, or do you actually, have a location you go to? Let's talk about that.
Well, mostly it's in person, and I teach at my own studio out here by my house, as well as at a store here, locally. But I have done a little bit of Skype lessons, and that's definitely a possibility. it's not the guitar lessons part aren't online anymore, but years ago, it was in about 2000 or 2001, I actually started one of the first online streaming guitar lesson websites. So I have actually done a lot of online lessons, but now it's mostly in person and maybe a little bit of Skype lessons here and there.
Folks, Lou DiBello, his fourth solo release album, Heatwave, is out now. You want to grab this CD? It's actually pretty great. Lou's a great guitarist. Get out, support him, buy this CD. Lou, how can folks stay in touch with you? Tour dates, things like that, when you take this on the road, if you do. And merchandise, how can they do that?
So, for sure, my website, loudibello.com, LOUDIBELLO.com, has certainly any major updates like that, and, people want to order signed CD direct, and every now and then maybe I might have some odds and ends up there. I don't really have any specific merchandise up there right now, but yeah, that's the main website is loudibello.com, and then also Facebook, Lou DiBello Guitar is a good way to follow me there, and there's a lot of stuff on there too.
Lou, before I let you go, good sir, would you care to a promo for the show?
Yeah, by all means. This is Lou DiBello, and you're listening to BODS Mayhem Hour.
Everybody stick around. We got some great music coming up, and you only hear these interviews right here on BODS Mayhem Hour at Uber City Radio. Thank you so much, Lou.
All right, John, thank you, man. I appreciate it.